All right, I'm live. Doesn't look like anyone's here. I'm trying out different times for streaming because I've been doing it on Friday in the past, and I think it's been success has been mixed. So if this is a good time for people, let me know in the comments. Obviously, because no one's here right now, so. I'm going to wait a second for people to come in before I get into this too much. Maybe get a couple people in here. Let me check my guitar signal. Today is what? Saturday? Yeah, Saturday morning. I'm going to try streaming on Sunday at some point too, because I think that'll be probably a good time as well. Check. Let's try out the guitar here. Seems to be working. Just change the strings on this. Let me try my other camera angle here, just in case I need up close shots. Yeah, nice. Cool. That'll work. If I need close-ups for when I'm playing some of this stuff. Here we go. Cool. All right. So, I'm going to wait just a couple more minutes before people get in here. Just trying to figure out if anyone comes in, let me know what times, are best for people as far as watching a live stream. I don't know. I thought the weekend might be good since people are less busy on the weekend typically, if you work a normal job. I don't even know what that's like anymore. I've been doing the music thing for a couple years, so all the days just blend together for me. Yeah, I think Saturday or Sunday probably be a good thing to do. So it was a noodle for a while. Maybe try to relearn some of the solo of this song. It's crazy. Cool. If anyone's gotten a chance to check out the latest tune, let me know. I put it up. Obviously, I put the video up a couple days ago. I'm pretty proud of how this one turned out overall. I think it ended up sounding pretty nice. It's a very intense song, right? Lots of 8-string and crazy rhythms and stuff. And I'll kind of go over all of that today in the session here. But I'm getting over a little bit of a cold too. So if my voice is a little bit low, that's what's going on. Trying to drink lots of water. All right. I'm just going to get into this since, I don't know, people may or may not show up. We'll see. But, you can always watch this after the fact. So, here's my session for Cosmic Void here. This is completely entirely mixed, this version. So, this isn't the mastered version because I usually throw that into... I do the mastering separate at the end, but it's all mixed here. You got all your plugins and stuff going. Let's see how this is laid out here. We've got the drums, and this is one of the only things I haven't exported to an audio file. It's still in here as MIDI. It depends. Sometimes I will export the program drums to audio just so it feels more like a natural drum set. In this case, I think the computer was handling it just fine, so I didn't do that. But kind of once I program them in, I try not to change them too much after the fact, because I think, there's always the temptation to kind of constantly tweak with the program drums if you have them. So let's look at that. But if I pull it up here in the mixing stage, you can see I have it all split out for the processing part of it. So overhead room, snare room, hi-hat, ride, kick, snare top and bottom, 3 toms, right? But as far as like the tracks here, it's going to just kind of show up as one thing. If you look at the MIDI roll here, lots of stuff going on. Hold on. There we go. Try to get it the right size. Now, there's a couple things I do with drums when I'm programming. I mean, there's obviously the writing of the parts, which is important, trying to make drum parts that sound natural and everything. But one of the things I do is I will, kind of change the velocities where they need to happen. So the beginning of these sort of, there's accented notes within these hi-hat patterns, for instance. I just try to make them feel a little bit more natural to have the dynamics happening. And that's going throughout, certain notes that I want to bring out, like in this first groove here. Or even right, there's dynamics happening in the hi-hat, or in the hi-hats even when the full groove kicks in. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll grab all of the MIDI notes here, and I'll do a humanize function, which I have on Studio One here, and I just humanize the velocities by a couple percent, like not a ton, but just to add a little bit of that kind of randomness that you would have with a real drummer. That in combination with going in and fine-tuning velocities in certain sections, I think that kind of really makes the drums feel a lot more natural. And there's a lot of really cool drum parts, I think, in here. I've gotten a lot better at programming drums over the years. And this song has some really interesting parts. There's a ton of ghost notes. In fact, they're quite loud in some of these sort of faster run parts. Right, you hear all those ghost notes in there. It just kind of adds to the groove overall to have that plus the accented notes. What am I doing percentage-wise on the ghost notes? Like 30%, whatever that happens to be. I use percentage here with the velocities. I know it's like the typical thing is to go from 0 to 127, but Studio One has it as percentages, so that's kind of where. And I like the drums to be, when they're hitting hard, anywhere between 80 and 90% velocity. Anything above that starts to sound weird a lot of times. Certain cymbals and stuff I'll bring up if I want them to come out more, but that's kind of a good sweet spot I've found, so that the drums are hitting nice and hard, but it's not too like smacky, or you start to get into like the rim shot sort of like territory if you get above that with the snare and stuff. But the ghost notes is one of the things that I've been adding a lot into my program drums lately. I think it adds a lot of sort of character to the drum parts. That, and what I always do when I program drums is try to have them match parts of the song that I think are cool. Accenting the parts of the riffs that are cool, and highlighting what else what is going on musically. So, like, there's this whole crazy section, which is Notice how there's those accented open hi-hats kind of following that rhythm, and then there's ghost notes between. Right, all those ghost notes in there. And they seem pretty loud when I solo it, but if you listen within the context of the whole song, it's like that's just enough for them to pop out. Right, a lot of times with real drums, with acoustic drums, people will, when mixers will take the ghost notes and put them on a separate track. Like anytime there's ghost notes happening, that the drummer's playing ghost notes, they'll get put on the second track, on a separate track, so they can process them separately and bring them up and down where they need to. Because ghost notes can be really tricky, especially with live drums, because you have a lot of bleed coming into the snare mics. So the way you have to gate them is different, and so it's nice with the program drums. I don't have to worry about that necessarily. You know, I can just program in the ghost notes as loud as I need them to be to kind of be heard. So it's tricky, and if you're not a drummer and you haven't done this kind of stuff before, it can be a little bit weird to do it at first, but it adds a lot to the drum parts to have that in there. And it's pretty much ghost notes happening throughout the entire song. That and cymbal work happening in certain places too, to kind of make things a little bit more interesting. The one place with the crazy ghost notes is the whole sort of thumping section, which I'll talk about later with the guitar, but and all those ghost notes are filling up lots of space. Anyway, so that's how the drums look. This is Modern and Massive, by the way. Get Good Drums, which is, if you're watching in my streams, you know this is kind of my go-to virtual drum software. Nothing too weird. It's mostly this sort of stock things, and I've just kind of balanced the levels within the plugin like I would like. And then they're going out of contact in kind of an interesting way. I have 5 stereo channels and then 6 mono channels. So the mono channels are all of your shells. So snare, kick, snare top and bottom, and then the 3 toms. Those are mono, and then the other ones are stereo. So your overheads and room, snare room, hi-hat, ride. It took me a while to kind of figure out this routing setup. Contact can be a little bit weird that way, so I had to like delete everything, add in the channels I wanted, and kind of go. But then I just saved it as a preset, and it seems to work just fine. That gives me like the most control over mixing the drums. Like I used to process all the toms together, you know, as like one tom out, but I really like the ability to process each one individually because they need different EQ curves, you know, depending on the tone of the tom. So that's kind of why I've gone about it that way. Let's look at the bass. So, you know, as of everything I've done lately in the Prog School, this is real bass on here since I have a bass guitar. Yay. Some of the early tunes that I did earlier this year were still programmed bass, but it's super nice to have real bass on all this stuff. I think it adds a lot to the tone. So basically what I do with the bass is I'll record just on one track. You know, I'll put in whatever tone I think sounds good for me to play with. And it'll just be kind of one track that goes in DI'd through. I have a direct box and then right in my interface. And then when it comes to mixing, I'll split it. So I duplicated it twice. So we have this DI bass track, which is essentially just the low frequencies of the bass. So if I pull up the EQ curve here. Yeah, it's just this sort of low, massively low passed. There's a high pass too, but gonna just give me like the fundamental tone of the bass. And then on top of that, I have a clean bass and then the main heavy bass. So most of this song is gonna use the heavy bass, but there's a few places with these melodic sections where I'm using this clean bass, and that has some effects on it, you know, when the melody's happening. Some delay. I think a little bit of reverb too. So that's just a clean bass by itself. I can bring in the DI bass, and it's going to give you some of that low end. It's subtle, but it's kind of lifting up the bottom end. And then you have the main heavy bass, which I think is Parallax. Yeah, so I'm using Parallax, which is neural DSP. This is awesome. It's so good for heavy bass. I love it. And I have a little bit of Saturn too here, giving just a little bit extra saturation on the top end. And then whatever EQ curves I think are good. You're trying to bring up some of those, like the pick attack of the bass. So if I combine that with the DI, you get the kind of main bass tone. And the bass tone is very important in how it mixes with the heavy rhythm guitars in this kind of music to make everything sound really nice and full. So I do spend some time trying to figure out exactly what the best bass tone is that's going to kind of mix with the rhythm guitars. You know, it's like it can be easy to go really heavy-handed on the distortion for the bass, but you got to find like the right balance where you're still getting the attack. So this is about as distorted probably as I'd want to go. So if I mix that with the drums, oh, sorry, I get the spinning wheel here. My computer, this is a pretty hefty session here, so we'll see how my computer handles it. Oh, it's just doing like an autosave. There we go. So there, drums and bass together. Sounds really nice. It's really nice to have real bass. Now, it is a pain in the butt to record this kind of stuff on bass because I'm not the world's best bass player, you know. And I'm using a pick for this song because it's the kind of, you know, heavy music really needs a pick, I think, on the bass. Let's take a look at the guitars. So the main rhythm guitars are 8-string, which I don't do terribly often, but this was a song that really features 8-string super heavily, which is fun. It's fun to kind of do something different every once in a while and get that 8-string sound going. So here's how they sound after they're all processed. And then with the bass blended there. Anyway, so there's all the rhythm instruments. The guitars, I think, I printed them to audio. So originally I had, when I recorded them, I was running them through the Kemper and then through some IRs, the Zilla cabs by Gecko Drums, I think on this one. But the Zilla cabs is pretty CPU intensive, so I just printed them down to audio once I had a tone that I liked. And actually, this tone ended up being quite dark, so there's like a ridiculous amount of plugins on here, which, you know, not ideal, I think, but for them to really pop out the way I wanted, that's what needed to happen. So if I turn off all the plugins, that's what I needed to have these guitars really pop out. So it looks like a lot, but each one of those is doing kind of a tiny bit to bring out some of the character of these rhythm guitars, just to make them a little bit less muddy. You know, my 8-string guitar it's great for what it is, but it's a Ibanez that I got like 5 years ago. I spent like $450 on it, and it has decent pickups, but it requires maybe a little bit more work than you would like. Eventually, I'll upgrade my 8-string at some point. So, but for now, it is what it is, and I think it works pretty well. And I can play some of these parts later if anyone wants that. Although no one's even here, so there you go. Yeah, and that main 8-string rhythm guitar is kind of going through most of the tune. Now there's these other, what I have labeled overdrive guitars. This is the hybrid picking thumping part. So this is like a really spanky single coil tone, and these are panned left and right as well. I did the same thing here. I'd run them through an IR, and then I printed the audio, or bounced the audio. That's a really nice sound. It ended up sounding exactly how I wanted, like really spanky and bright. I don't think I even did really that much to it. I mean, I kind of lifted up the high end, quite a bit more than you might normally do for this kind of thing, but a little bit of reverb. Yeah, I did a lot to like sort of bring up the high end of it. Yeah, that's before any processing. On their own, they may be a little bit like almost shrill sounding. But that's what you really need for this kind of stuff to like pop out exactly how I wanted it to. Because if you blend it with the other... you get that really strong attack of the pick and fingers, which is simulating the thumping, since I can't thump. All right, that's kind of the idea here. Was I wanted that kind of Animals as Leaders-esque sort of thumping sound, and that's what was necessary for me to get that. The tone was a big part of it. Hello from Russia. Nice, welcome. You are the first one here to comment. Ask me your questions. No, I'm just trying out new live streaming times to see, so I'm not expecting a ton of people to show up, but I got to see which what's going to work best for me going forward. We're loading here. There we go. Cool. Anyway, so that's the overdrive guitar, and it just does that sort of thumping bit, and then it kind of plays underneath the solo too. We have multiple lead guitars. The main lead guitar, and then the second lead guitar, which does some background stuff. Overdrive guitar. This is only doing this hybrid picking part, which is actually the very first thing that I wrote for this song. Now, it doesn't actually end up being like a main feature of this song, but let me find the right tone for it. And this is one of those interesting things, like this was the first thing I wrote for the song, and it ended up kind of being more in the background when I finally finished the mix, but it kind of at least gave me the inspiration to start the song. So let me get my other camera angle here. That's the sound there. So basically I have these open strings, and then you get that half step sort of dissonance there. So I'm hybrid picking, trying to get that poppy sound with my middle finger, and then heavily muting too. And this is all groups of 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a very cool sound, and then I kind of move that through different chords later. But the main part is just there. Took me a while to kind of get that down. The idea was for it to flow really smoothly, and then to be kind of aggressive. You can hear that. Very top end heavy, which I think for this kind of a thing is kind of what I wanted, just like those hybrid picked thumping kind of guitars too. So that's that, and there's a couple of clean guitars. The one clean guitar is just doing all the bendy bits. And then the other guitar is doing this weird, a clean guitar is doing this weird sweeping harmonic thing, which I'll talk about later. So let's go back to the beginning of the song and just take a look at all this stuff. There's a bunch of keyboards and pianos and stuff here too. I'll kind of talk about all that stuff as I go through it. So it starts right off with this sort of main little melodic theme. So that kind of sounds like quarter notes if you just listen to it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, the 2E and the 3E and the 4E and the 1E. But those are actually happening every 5 16th notes. So it's really groups of 5 in between all of those. So you can hear that when the sort of rhythm instruments kick in. Right? So like a quintuplet sort of a feel. Although I have it written as 16th notes, not quintuplets. But so it's kind of a rhythmic, almost like a rhythmic illusion right off the bat. You're feeling these steady pulses because they are steady. And it's easy to kind of latch onto those as being a quarter note, for instance. But in this case, they're not. They're actually 5 16th notes long. I love that kind of stuff that throws you off a little bit, so you wouldn't expect it. It's kind of, let's see, what am I using here? So there's the clean guitar. So this is this is something I learned from Eric Johnson originally. It's like the Kodo, I think it's called the Kodo Technique. So basically what you do is you do these little bends. Those sort of things. My mic level's low? Okay. I might just be talking quietly. I'll turn my mic up there. I have a tendency to talk very quietly once I get going. So I will try to talk louder. Need some delay and reverb. There we go. Let me know if that's better on my mic. I did turn it up, so I just don't want to peek anything out. Right, those little tiny bends. It's like a character sort of thing, and you can do this kind of stuff, within different kinds of leads and solos too. It's a very effective technique. And the other way to do it is to tap, pull off. That's better. Cool. Awesome. You tap, pull off, and then this is easier with a little bit of gain, but and then you pull off and do that quick bend. It's a very interesting technique and sounds very cool. Now I'm not actually doing that in this song. I'm just doing like the little bends. And I was very specific on where those happen within within this particular melody. So this is one of the sort of main themes of the song, is this movement here. And this is all out of the Phrygian mode, so it's most of the song is actually, the entire song is pretty much based out of G except for like one section, but so that's all G Phrygian. It's a very sort of, I guess, quote unquote, exotic sounding thing, but you know, Phrygian has a certain vibe to it, a very dark vibe, and it's something I really like, and I think it works well for this particular song. Then that is doubled with harpsichord, which I love to use harpsichord, probably too much, but I like the attack that a harpsichord gives. The music feels Japanese. Actually, yes, let me talk about that. So we got the harpsichord, and then we also have this instrument here, which I'm not even trying to pronounce. You can see the name here, Yanquin. That's, I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to try. But this was a free plugin that Native Instruments put out a while back, and I picked it up. And at that time, I was writing this song, and I listened to this instrument. I was like, you know, that sounds awesome. I think that it would work really well with this. So one of the main features in this particular section is this Japanese instrument. So that's interesting you say it feels Japanese. So that's the sound of that instrument. I think it worked really well in this particular case. And that instrument plays that melody, and then it plays a different melody later on too. Right, it kind of doubles some of the melodies. So if I do all those instruments together, it's the harpsichord, the guitar, and then that Japanese instrument you get. So really the Japanese instrument there is kind of the main focus. The other instruments are just supporting it. Like the harpsichord's giving you some attack, and then the guitar is, of course, making it sound like a guitar-based sort of piece. And under that, I have this low pad, which is Massive. I think it's a plugin or it's preset from Massive. Massive X, which is another Native Instruments plugin. Sort of very spacey, ethereal sound that has a lot of, body to it. So I use that in some of the quieter sections to kind of give you that mysterious sound underneath. So all that together. So that melody there that plays in the bass, I think it just plays in the bass, yeah. That is a variation on a melody that happens later in the song, but... Then you get the groups of 5 that come in here in this next section. I like doing melodies with the bass. It feels like something that doesn't get used enough. Anytime the bass guitar can do something different from the rhythm guitars and move up and register or kind of you just do its own thing, I think is cool. And there's a number of places in this song where that happens, where the bass is doing its own thing, which is fun. I think that it's a good way to write. I mean, it is nice to double the rhythm guitars. It adds to the heaviness, and for if you want to make something sound super heavy and make a riff really pop out, like having the bass double the guitars is pretty essential, but it's nice to have it do something else too in certain places. So then you get this kind of stabbing quintuplet rhythm, right, or this 16th note rhythm that's grouped in 5s. Well, then we got the spinning wheel of death. No, it's just the program. It's just going to auto-save every couple minutes. It's real fun. It's fine. I like that it does that. I don't lose anything, but... And then that hybrid picked guitar thing enters, and that is actually doubled by... Is that doubled by anything yet? I don't think so. No. It does get doubled here with these staccato strings. It's one sound I'll use a lot to double faster runs. This is a plugin by a VST by Impact Soundworks called Furia, Furia, staccato strings, and it's specifically staccato strings for these sort of fast runs. So I'll double some of the faster runs later on. I double with these staccato strings as well. It's a very cool sound. It's very much in the background, but if you listen really closely on the right side, it's there. I don't know if I doubled that with something else too. Yep. I also have a synth. Yeah, I also have a synth come in on that too. So you have the overdriven guitars, the synth, and then the strings. It's cool. Yeah, anytime you can double parts with other instruments, I think the sound is really interesting. And I have two lead synth parts or sounds that essentially, yeah, they're doubled the entire time. They're just bringing out different characters. So I have like my main lead synth, which is one of my favorite presets from Massive. And then this one, which is, I think, from a Plugin Alliance virtual instrument. More of a phase sort of thing. And then together, I may have them panned on this part. I'm not exactly sure. I'm doing a lot of panning throughout this song, especially with the orchestration and keyboard instruments. I think panning things left and right, or even part way to out of the middle, kind of lets certain things pop more. Or if I have parts doubled, like for instance, if a guitar part is also doubled with synth, it's like sometimes I'll put the guitar on the left and the synth on the right. It's like I don't want too many things kind of headed right down the middle. That way, if I want to put the main melodies right down the middle, that those are going to kind of come out a little bit more, because there's a lot of parts happening. So you have that fast 16th note run thing happening, and then there's also still the original clean guitar thing, underneath that, and then there's like a main melody too. Oh, I have piano on that run too. That's cool. I didn't even realize that. I think I just felt like it needed it overall. And then this is where the rhythm guitars enter in, and they take over this original melodic part from the beginning, but they're doing it way down, on the 8th string, down like 3 or 4 octaves. So that main melody there is actually quite simple, and I think I wanted to purposely do it that way because there's so much rhythmic interest happening underneath it that having like a really notey melody didn't make sense. So the melody, you get a lead sound here. Lots of bar work on the guitar, and I do that in the solo too. It's like anytime these sort of long floaty leads, and I do some harmonics too. I think it just works with the particular sound. Oh, we got the spinning wheel of death. Anyone who's here, just feel free to ask me questions too about any of this stuff. I'm just kind of going through the song piece by piece. But if there's one part you're like, hey, how do you play that, or this sounds cool, let me know. Right? That kind of a sound. And that's doubled with a couple different instruments as well. I think, there's strings. And the strings is Spitfire Audio's Albion 1, which is a really awesome orchestral plugin. Spitfire makes some of the best orchestral stuff. And I haven't even really explored that sound, this particular virtual instrument fully yet, but I used it on here just to kind of amp up the melodies with some strings. I like to use strings. It works really well on this kind of music. You're just listening and working. Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I will keep talking then. What time is it in Russia? What, you got to be 12 hours ahead of me, right? 10 hours ahead of me? You can let me know. I'm not sure what the time difference is. Cool. So then it moves into this old tappy bit. I'm probably not even going to try to play this. I'm not sure that I even remember how it goes, but would I recommend Studio One for a noob? Yes. Have you used a DAW before? Are you using any DAW currently? I used GarageBand originally because I've always been a Mac guy. You're self-employed. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Me too. I used GarageBand to start because I'm a Mac guy, and that worked fine for me. But my dad, this was when Studio One was kind of a new thing. He had a version of Studio One that he used for something, and he gave me a copy. Okay. So it's almost midnight then. Cool. You're giving me military time there. I have to do math. But he gave me a copy of Studio One, and I really enjoyed it from the beginning. I think it's one of the more amplitude light, but barely. Okay. I think it's one of the more user-friendly DAWs, at least to me. Everything feels very user-friendly for me when I use Studio One. I've had absolutely no problems with it. It never crashes on me. And I'm running a million plugins here, in all sorts of virtual instruments. Ableton, okay. I find Ableton is used more often by people doing electronic music, is what it seems like. A lot of the guys who do a lot of that kind of stuff use Ableton. So if you're into that kind of thing, I think Ableton's a good choice. My choice is, if people ask me, I would tell them either Studio One, because obviously I'm biased towards that because I use that, or Logic. If you're a Mac guy, Logic is, or a Mac person, sorry. Logic is great too. Logic is very user-friendly, and I think Logic has the best stock plugins, at least as far as what I've seen. Some of the stock plugins on Logic are really good. And Studio One doesn't have as good as stock plugins. They have a lot, and they're okay, but I pretty much use third-party plugins exclusively. But I did use some of the stock ones when I first started, and they work okay. But the user interface of Studio One is really great. And Studio One actually has a whole separate thing called projects where you can just do mastering. So what I'll do is I'll mix here, in a session, then I'll export it, and I'll put it into a project and do the mastering part separately. So it feels very professional and laid out really well. So I can't recommend it enough. I mean, I've literally had no problems with Studio One at all. And I found it pretty easy to use. I know Pro Tools, which is kind of the industry standard still, is a lot trickier. Ableton comes with the Focusrite. I think Studio One is too. Yeah. Now I actually have a Presonus interface as well. So I think if you had a Presonus interface, they give you a copy of Studio One. Now Studio One has a couple different levels, I think. I don't know what they are now. I have the professional, which is the highest one. But when I had it before, there was a artist version that had just a little bit less options. Then there was one above that too. It was called Producer or something, which gave you more options, but not as much as the professional one. So if you wanted to even try it out, I think you could get one of those lower end ones and just see how it feels. And if you like it, you can upgrade. They also do a subscription thing because everyone does a subscription thing now. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the subscription sort of format, because I prefer to buy things and have them. Because this, like, subscriptions, you have to do that with everything now. It's like Netflix, and if you start doing that with plugins and with DAWs and stuff, you're going to end up having like all those small subscription things every month add up a lot. So I prefer to like buy something and just have it. But I think that Priestess does have an option for like paying for it every month, sort of thing. Priestess audio interface and Studio One Artist. Yeah, I think the Priestess interfaces come with Studio One Artist right away, and that's what I started with, was Artist. And it works. It's got a lot of options for being such a inexpensive version. I don't think that Artist allows you to use third-party plugins and things like that, and you can't do as many tracks, and so there are some limitations to it. But as a place to start, it's good, So yeah, I'll continue on here. Thanks for the questions, though. It's good. Yeah, I prefer to buy. Yeah, I don't know. That's just how I've always been. I do that with plugins too. Like all these, I've been buying a lot of plugins over the last couple of years, to kind of work on my mixing and everything. And like so many of the plugin companies, they do subscription-based things, and it's like the idea is cool, and maybe if I was doing it professionally, that'd be fine. But it's like I'd rather just spend a little bit extra money or wait till something comes on sale and then own it. Then I don't have to worry about paying for it every month. Also, the subscription thing gives you so many options. It's almost like if I subscribe to a plugin company or something, I get like 1,000 plugins. It's like, how am I ever supposed to use any of these? I'd prefer to choose the ones that I really like and kind of purchase it. But I can see the benefit to the subscription thing if that's what you want to do. All right. So this part is awesome. This is in 2916. And actually, yeah, so it's 2916 kind of through this whole section, even on that lower, heavier riff too. So it's really these tapping patterns. And kind of when I do this, I mean, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, 2916 or whatever. But I'm really kind of just grouping it into smaller chunks. So we have 6, 5, 6, 5, and then 7. So that adds up to 29, right? I can't really count it out, but it's just like a tapping pattern. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. It's on, I don't know. I can't even remember how to play it. I'm not even going to grab my 8-string right now and try to play it because it's I think you could actually do this particular part on 7-string. But anyway, like, so the bass guitar is hitting on these beginnings of these patterns of 6, 5, and 7. And then the guitars are doing those patterns. This part is stupid hard to play. But you can watch my playthrough video if you want to see me playing it, or at least playing along with it. And these get doubled with other instruments. So the main one I'm doubling it with is piano. And this is very much the Tigran Hamasyan sort of sound. I'm a huge fan of his. I did a video on him a couple months ago, if anyone's checked that out. Awesome modern jazz pianist. Does all this sort of crazy rhythmic stuff. A lot of my crazy rhythmic ideas come from listening to his music. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's like jazz piano gent. But if I do the solo piano part, it's going to sound kind of exactly like that. So the left hand of the piano is hitting those lower notes and the right hand's doing those runs. If I do that with the guitars and bass, you'll kind of get the effect of how this is working. And actually, I have the low part of the piano pretty loud. I like the intensity of the brand, those big octaves on the piano. Kind of fills up the space because the rhythm guitars are doing the tapping, so you lose some of that. So the the piano in combination with the bass are kind of working together to give you that really intense low end. And this goes to the note C. Yeah, you know, I didn't play 7-string for a long time. I just had a 6-string until, I don't know, I guess it's almost 6 years ago now. But when I joined A Sense of Gravity, which is the progressive metal band, we're kind of on hiatus now, but the progressive metal band that I played with, I joined them, and most of their songs were 7-string, so I was like, okay, I got to get a 7-string. Once I got it, though, I kind of realized, hey, there's so much you can do with it. And I still write a lot on 6-string. Like, all the lead guitar parts on this song are all 6-string stuff. But to have some extended range every once in a while to, like, bring that sort of sound in is really cool. And in this case, you know, this whole song is kind of built around those low tunings, which is interesting. But most of my songs, I find I end up doing 7-string for rhythm. Every once in a while I'll do 8, and sometimes I'll just stick with a 6-string, depending on the style of music I'm playing. But I find myself going to the 7-string just so every once in a while I can bring in those low notes. And the other thing with the 7-string is that I have a 5-string bass, so I can still... Sorry, my camera is being right there. So I can still do an octave down on the bass all the time, right? When you get to 8-string, like in this song, all the low 8-string parts, the guitar and bass are in the same octave, right? As soon as I get down to the low 8-string, I can't go an octave lower on the bass. So with a 7-string, I can still go an octave lower on the bass, and you get that separation of the bass and guitar, which is cool. So that's kind of typically what I've been doing lately. Yeah, 7-string is fun, and you know, it took me a while. You know, it took me at least a couple months of serious practice to feel comfortable, because my brain was so used to thinking of the lowest string as E, because I played 6-string, you know, the entire time. And I find that I still practice mostly on 6-string, you know, and like I gig a lot, and every time I doing like, you know, pop music and country music or whatever, and I'm never playing an extended range guitar in any of those situations. So I'm still mostly on a 6-string, but like I'm comfortable enough at least with the 7-string and 8 strings that like I can look at it and understand how it works, you know. But there's a lot of more options for chords and stuff too with 7-string. I really like being able to extend big chord shapes down, lower too. And then that gets sort of amplified even further with the 8-string. So that's kind of what's happening in this particular section. And this is all based on C. So we were in G Phrygian before for pretty much the whole song up to this point. And then here it moves up to C Phrygian. So it's just kind of changing the root notes up. And what's nice here is the C is a pretty low note on the 5-string bass, right? So you're getting that sort of like super, really low bass. And then here in this, ooh, it looks, what company are you going for with your 7-string guitar? I'm just curious. I have a Carvin right before they became Kiesel. Like, I think they changed the model I had to Kiesel like the year after I got it. Yeah, so anyway, it goes through this section in C, and then this really low part is in F. So I have my 8 strings tuned, the low string tuned down to E from F sharp. So F is one of the lowest notes possible. So if you listen on this part. And there, the bass is in the same octave as the guitar. That's all in 2916 too. Oh, cool. Thanks for hanging out. Go run your errands. I gotta have to do some of that too later here. But yeah, come check out the rest. Oh, a custom shop in Russia. Cool. Yeah, there's so many custom shops out there. It's cool if you do something local, though. I like that. If there was a good local builder around me, you know, I'd consider something like that. Yeah, so kind of goes through those sections again, and then there's a little sort of transition measure before you get back to the sort of main intro section. If you notice, most of the song up to this point, it's all really been in one time signature. It's like 5/4 up to that point, and then into the 29/16. So there's not a lot of like shifting meters in this song. It's more kind of like hanging out on these sort of odd grooves and kind of expanding upon those as I can. So that's kind of one of the ways I like to write with weird rhythms, is not constantly changing time signatures, although I do that in certain songs. But with a song like this, I think it's fun to kind of just hang out on these weird rhythms and really kind of see what I can get out of them. And that comes into play even more in this sort of middle section, which I'm almost to. But this second time, this, I guess what I'm going to call the chorus, whatever, the main theme comes in, it's slightly different rhythmically. It's actually pretty weird. It doesn't sound as weird as it is from a sort of technical perspective, but... Oh, custom guitar, nice. New guitar day is always the best. It's been a while since I've bought a new guitar. I think that the bass back there is my last one. That's been over a year. I'm due for a new guitar at some point. No, I've got everything I need right now. Although that's not true. You never have everything you need. This section's weird. So, as I was talking about earlier, you have these groups of... I'm really treating like that main section at the beginning like groups of 5/16 notes. So that's still happening here. These main beats are... 5/16 notes long, but within that 5/16 note length, what I do is then I divide what is normally 5 into 7, which sounds crazy, but then I kind of treat what would be 5/16 notes at the original tempo. I treat that as the beat, and then put 7 notes in between all of those. So it's, when I have it written out, it's actually a 7 within 5 tuplet. Now, it sounds insane, but really I'm kind of treating each of those beats as having 7 notes. And there's this crazy piano part that's actually playing those 7s completely. I think that got buried more in the background in the mix than I would have wanted, but you can kind of hear it if you listen closely. And I can't even count it out. That's how fast they are, those 7s. But essentially you kind of get this kind of off-kilter thing within those beats. What's cool about that is that because the melody, the main melody, and then this sort of background, because those are so simple and they really just kind of follow the beat, that it's not quintuplets grouped as 7. It's like, it's 7 notes within the space of where 5 would have been. So 7 notes. So if you think of that beat as quintuplets, it's essentially, it just turns into what? Septuplets, which is 7. Right? So that beat changes from having 5 notes in it to then having 7 notes in it. Now, you're not really hearing that. I mean, the main rhythm instruments aren't playing all those 7 notes, right? The only thing that's playing all 7 of those fast notes is the, like, piano sort of arpeggios. But that's what's happening here. And it was a way for me to make this melodic section slightly different when it comes back again. And then later in the song, when it comes back, it's even different again. But if I can do that kind of thing and make a section, like, it still has the same melody and still has the same sort of overall feel, but if I can make it slightly different when it comes back again, like I like to do that kind of stuff, I think it makes it more interesting. Anyway, from there we move into the sort of whole really long bridge section, which is all based around one melody. I'll play some of that. So you have, once again, the bass kind of taking over the melody. I'll talk about that harmonic guitar here in a second, but the main rhythmic thing that's happening here is 6 and then 5. So these are as 16th notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's faster than that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's kind of based on what happened in the 29-16 part. In the 29-16 part, it was 6-5, 6-5, and then 7. So what I did was just take the 6-5 part of that and then turn that into an entire thing. So these clean guitars, this clean guitar that bends, it's playing the beginning of each group of 6 and 5. So I guess every 11 16th notes. But if you listen to it by itself, it sounds like, I guess, half notes, right? Or quarter notes. Probably more like half notes. Sorry, my auto-saving here. Right, that kind of sounds like half notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... But really there's 11 16th notes happening within each of those. So what happens is that the groups of 6 and 5, they're pretty fast. So they almost feel like straight beats. It almost feels like 4/4, but like slightly off. If I go later on, you can hear that. So if I was to count what I'm kind of feeling, these 6s and 5s would be like 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That kind of a thing. So it's cool. It's almost like you get this really bizarre thing that almost sounds somewhat normal, but it's definitely not at all. And then this harmonic guitar comes in. So what am I doing there? Let's see if I can do this. It's pretty hard to do. So I just have this chord shape. Let me get my other camera here. It's just, in the first one anyway, it's just barring across the 3rd fret. So what I do is I find the harmonics 12 frets above it. And I hold my pick in my middle finger. And I sweep down while creating those harmonics. Let me get the right pickup here. Thanks. Yeah, it's a fun rhythm. It's really hard to play, actually. That was one of the hardest ones to record on the rhythm guitars, is that part that I just played. So that's the sound. It's really tricky to do, to like get all those to come out really clearly. And it's more of it's a textural thing, really. I kind of wanted this interesting sort of texture in the background. So it's something that's technical and kind of hard to do, but done more for an effect than it is to be like flashy. And then I kind of move that through different chord shapes, and that's where it gets tricky, because you have to angle your finger to still stay 12 frets above whatever chord you happen to be fretting. So I think later there's a chord like this. Right, so I'm kind of like having to angle my finger. Anyway, so that's how the technique works. It's interesting. You know, I've seen that kind of thing done before, but it was fun to kind of mess with that and see if I could make something that sounded musical. And I actually kind of made up my own scale here. I know it's maybe not like completely new, but what I did was took a Phrygian scale and raised the 4th 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the scale that's being used through this whole section. That just allowed me to have some like different sounding chords and stuff. So that harmonic guitar kind of continues through this whole section, just adding some texture underneath. And I actually quantized that, which I don't like quantizing guitars, and I hardly ever do it. It's like very, very rare. This is one of the only times I've ever done it, but I thought it needed it so it really kind of locked in with the rhythm, because it was really hard to play within the right rhythm. You know, it's one of those tricky things. So this section kind of continues and just slowly builds, bringing in more instruments and rhythms. Yes, this is math rock. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, it doesn't really sound like what we'd consider to be, quote unquote, math rock these days, but there's definitely a lot of math involved, right? I don't know. This is a song where I really wanted to explore some of these interesting kind of super advanced rhythmic concepts. I like to do that just in general, but this may be more so than normal. And I think the main goal for me was to see if I could do it and make it sound musical, right? So the goal is, if you're listening to it, that you're not necessarily thinking about the complexity of the rhythms. They're just kind of creating something that sounds a little bit different. At least that's the goal anyway. Whether or not I achieve that, that's up to, I suppose, the listener. But it's fun. It's a fun experiment. I mean, the application of this kind of rhythmic stuff into music is the hardest thing. Like, from a sort of conceptual standpoint, it's easy enough to kind of think about. Well, maybe not. I mean, you know, at least to kind of pick up on if you're used to doing weird rhythms, but to actually apply it into music, that's kind of the most difficult step. So anything I learn, I try to be able to do something musical with it if possible, you know. So here, the melody that was played in the bass before is now taken over with lead guitars, and so the higher instruments, you know, so kind of an arrangement thing, you know, switching instruments are playing which part depending on what the dynamic level is here. So here's this, what I call faux thumping, but it's really done with hybrid picking. I'm not going to cover this too much here because I'm actually doing a separate lesson completely on this part, like one of my normal Prog School lessons, because I think it's a really interesting technique. But essentially, I'm, you know, it's on the 8th string, but I have, I'm going between the pick and the finger, kind of like creating that somewhat kind of thumping type sound. And this is still based on those rhythms of 6 and 5. And that kind of then leads, this 6 and 5 rhythm is still continuing through all of this. And then that leads into the solo, which is this really long, spacey, sort of fusion-esque solo that has a bunch of interesting chords. So it's like, I think it's G minor, major 7, one of my favorite chords, minor, major 7 chords, then G diminished, F sharp, minor 9, and then A flat, minor major 7. So it led to some interesting note choices in the guitar. And I tried to, it's a really long solo, so I tried to build it and have everything kind of flow naturally and kind of work my way up into the shreddy stuff. So I'll just let the solo play. I won't talk about it too much. So anyway, long solo, you know. Towards the end, it gets real shreddy. There are a couple cool licks in here. Particularly, there's this one sequence in the middle part where I kind of really latch on to those groups of 6 and 5 within the solo. So some of the faster licks are kind of floating over the rhythm, but it's cool if they can lock in sometimes too. So that lick is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I am not warmed up enough to do that right now. It's kind of a weird sort of picking pattern. It's like a combination of sweeping and hybrid picking. That kind of a thing. But it's fun because there I like to purposely choose to lock in with the rhythm, whereas like some of the faster runs later on, I'm kind of floating over the beat. You know, that kind of like classic shreddy stuff. So doing, you know, in a solo like this with the rhythms complex, it's like a lot of the time I end up kind of floating over the beat and doing things that I think sound cool over it, and then sometimes I want to really kind of lock in with this weird rhythm to accent it, you know. And then we get this heavy riff. So that whole part is still 11 until it gets back to that the 29/16 sort of tapping part, and I bring back this melody from earlier in the bridge section over top of this heavier riff. This is kind of like a selective picking riff. I can't really do it on the 6th string, but it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The tuning is different on the A string, so it works a little bit better, but that's kind of the idea anyways. I pick a couple notes and then hammer on from nowhere on the other notes. That's what this sound is. Sounds cool. And it's done in octaves, so the one rhythm guitar is down low on the A string and the other one is up an octave. And then it does, when this 29/16 tapping part comes back, it's done a little bit differently. The lead guitars then is now doing the tapping up an octave, and the rhythm guitars are doing the low hits. And here there's all kinds of, if I just solo like all the keyboards and orchestration, you get. I think that sounds cooler than the guitars and bass. I should have just done it as orchestrated. But those sounds, that really blends in with the guitars, I think, really nicely. And then it goes back to the main rhythm, and this time, or the main sort of melodic theme, and this time it's done in like a triplet 12/8, really slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So once again, bringing back that same melodic theme in a little bit of a different way again, this time slower and heavier. So the rhythm guitars are literally like chugging on a power chord way the heck down on the 8 string. Right. So after everything that's been so complex for the entirety of the song, it's cool to like have a part like that where it's just like, yeah, like headbang, you know, sort of thing. Anyway, and so the melody is all the same there. It's just all done slightly slower because it's like this triplet, sort of slow triplet feel. And then it goes right back to this thumping riff. Here, though, there's some the main rhythm guitars are doing some stuff as well, and then there's these little like harmonic stabs up higher on the. Happens with some strings too, but it's like the guitar playing up higher. It sounds cool. I think to come out of this like heavy part back into this kind of groovy riff it sounds really nice. I got the spinning wheel of death again. Oh, you can do it. There we go. As I said, this is a pretty CPU intensive and then it's back to the intro sort of groove with the groups of 5 and this opening sort of hybrid picking comes back. So there's this one more cool rhythmic thing. So we have this kind of quintuplet feel. So then what I do is to group things in groups of 3. So it's so it's like groups of 3 in the quintuplets. So quintuplets are 5, right? So 3 groups of 5 is the same as 5 groups of 3. So they do end up lining up, which is cool. Eventually, so you kind of get this sound. Like if I play the drums, kind of feels like almost like a tempo shift, but it's not quite. So this part was really fun. Like I wanted to take what was happening in the intro and kind of expand upon it, add different instruments in to finish off the song, then do this kind of weird rhythmic thing, and then bam, end with that sort of main hook again. Anyway, there's the song, and it ends with the what I do with this Japanese instrument is I automated the reverb to like really get huge at the very end to kind of end off the song. So fitting with that theme of the cosmic void, you know, the endless void of space. So I didn't really intend for this to be the case, but I think I ended up having this song be kind of a spiritual successor to my solo album from I guess 4 years ago now, The Ascent, which was talking about like essentially the story there was like trying to get away from the planet or get into space. So at the end of The Ascent, it that happens, right? Whatever, who's traveling, like it gets at the people get off the planet and into space. So the idea here was this song is kind of an extenuation of that, is like dealing with the cosmic void of space, right? So that's why there's all this kind of spacey atmospheric stuff, these weird rhythms, like things that sound kind of alien, and almost otherworldly in some places, trying to capture that kind of feeling of being out, in the middle of nowhere in space. So hopefully I achieved that in some sort of way. But there's a lot of really fun stuff in here, and that's why I kind of wanted to do this much of a deep dive into the rhythms, because I'm not going to be able to do probably individual lessons on all these different sections, but I definitely could. There's enough to talk about, I think, in all of this, that it would be something that I could do. But I only have so much time to make lessons. So I'm going to do a lesson on a few sections of this song that I think are really useful from a sort of writing theoretical perspective. But, I wanted to kind of be able to break down all of it in a live stream like this and kind of touch on all the different parts again. So I know there wasn't many people watching live here, but if you're watching this after the fact, you can always just comment and leave me questions. I pretty much answer everything at this point, until my channel gets big enough where I can't answer everyone's questions. I will answer everyone's questions as much as humanly possible. Like, that's what I'm here for, to like help people. That's my main goal with this channel, is just to help people be able to understand this kind of stuff and be able to write these kinds of things themselves. So anyway, yeah, thanks for hanging out, especially the few of you that were here and were commenting and stuff. I really appreciate it. Let me know if this is a good time, people. This is kind of a weird time, Saturday morning. I think ideally I was shooting for a Sunday afternoon, but I'm busy tomorrow, so I can't do that. But in the future, I'm going to do a live stream in a couple of weeks, like a fun kind of Christmas live stream. I have an idea in mind. I got to figure out exactly what day I'm going to do that, but it's probably going to be a weekend day again. But if this is a decent time, let me know. I have been live streaming on Friday evening before, but I know people like to do stuff on Friday, and myself included. So if this is a good time, like I might choose to do this kind of thing instead. Anyway, you guys, everyone have a good weekend. Have a good day. Enjoy your life. And I'll see you guys all in a couple of weeks in the live stream. In the meantime, I have all kinds of videos coming out. I'm currently finishing up the script for my last big analysis video of the year. It's going to be a pretty large one, and I'm really excited about it, talking about one of my favorite bands and one of my favorite songs of theirs. So it's going to be really cool. And then I have a couple of other things coming out before the end of the year, some more videos based off of this song, and then the collaboration thing I'm doing here in the next couple of weeks. So anyway, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you guys later.